All right, so now we're live. All right, thank you for coming to the Cam Up podcast. It's your boy Will. We're broadcasting live from the basement, and we have Alexis Weimer. Let me take my glasses off. Um, so Alexis, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
All right. First of all, I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a nurse by profession. Um, I'm also a dancer by hobby, and
Mm,
I'm a Zumba instructor. Um, and I have also a Zumba instructing license to um, do group fitness classes for children, recently obtained. So I'm excited about that. And I am the owner and founder of A Peace of Mind Enterprises, which is a coaching and consulting business whose purpose is to serve women who have been affected by abuse and helping them gain a peace of mind.
okay, so you are a nurse, man. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something. I tried to enroll in nursing school. I didn't make it. Okay, I like I had to study for the test, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this. Even though I like helping people, yeah, that wasn't my lane. At least not to get through the first couple parts of it. Um, okay, so I know that since you're a nurse, that you see a lot of stuff. Um, my mom works in a hospital. My wife works in a hospital, so they tell me many of stories. And my mom, she actually used to work at OSU, the main hospital. Um, so she saw a lot of different things. So when you talk about helping women with situations that deal with abuse, what type of abuse do you help them deal with?
My aim is to help women who have been affected by abuse by means of emotional abuse, physical abuse. There's many different forms of abuse as far as verbal, psychological, social. A lot of these things tie into some of the same categories, but the um, four main categories of abuse being physical, emotional, sexual to an extent, and neglect.
Okay.
Um, More so, where I personally relate mostly is to physical and emotional abuse, and emotional abuse being the most extensive areas that I have the most relatable experience and where I feel I would have the absolute most expertise in regards to my reach, and being able to help women the way that I've been able to help myself is the only way I can really put it.
Okay. Okay. So we didn't talk very much like before starting it. So 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 explain some of the things that you've gone through and how you've seen it um, kind of hinder um, how you would move, like as far as being a mom or being a wife, just things that you have went through. Because what tends to happen is when you go through something and it's trauma related, it kind of spills over into different aspects of life. Um, so if you could dive into that just a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a very good question. How did it hinder me? I can say that becoming a mother for most of us is innate. And, it's natural for us to have that instinct, that maternal instinct, to have an attachment emotionally to your children, which I definitely had that when I had my children. Um, in my hindrance with regard to how abuse affected, my maternal instincts, there were times where emotionally um, I was more concerned and more wrapped up in my own problems mentally. There were blockages to the ways that I needed to be present for my child emotionally sometimes, so where the natural things will come into instinct, make sure your child, especially an infant child, changed, is fed, if the child's crying and cannot be consoled, find a way to get them to be quiet. But, as they got older and as they matured and as I got older, the maturing part on my behalf took more time than it probably was warranted with regard to how fast my child was growing. My maturity needed to be at the same pace as my child was maturing and needing my maturity to be present emotionally in order to be supportive, so that my child would be emotionally healthy. So their behaviors is such as being withdrawn sometimes. I found myself once my children were in elementary school and they weren't always at home. While they were not home, sometimes I'd find myself having not done the best things with my time, that they were not there because I'm wrapped up in emotionally and mentally what I have gone through or have endured because of the experience that I was having with regard to, being emotionally or physically abused. And that is as a child that has trickled into my adulthood and in my, at that time, current experience and relevant experience.
Okay, so now, did you seek therapy before children, and then, you know, I always hear about postpartum depression. So, like, could you tell? Because it can kind of get messy. Because it's like if you're already going through something, and then pregnancy and childbirth is known to cause postpartum, it's like where did the trauma start, and then where did the postpartum begin, or like could you tell at all?
No, a lot of the revelation that I received was hindsight. You know, um, this was years after, and looking back, processing and thinking. Once I get to an exacerbation of a big blow up or a big issue, I'm wondering, okay, what's the root of this? Where did this all begin? What does this all stem from? And that's when I was able to process it and say, well, this comes from, first of all, when I was in this relationship and this was going on. Well, why was that okay in that relationship? Why was I okay with enduring that for that period of time? And why didn't I seek help? No, I did not, to answer your question, seek therapy because it was unrecognizable that that's what I was going through, was abuse. For the most part, before the physical part started, it was the emotional part, things that go very subtle. For example, I was in a relationship where we were always together all the time and there was no break. And when you are a child and you grow up with, you know, um, first of all, my mother who was abused and you witnessed that abuse, that's the first thing. Second
Mm-hmm.
thing, because your mother, didn't get intervention, therapy, um, and resolve those issues, you know, unintentionally, I like to believe, she became a more uninvolved parent, where she made sure we were fed, we were clothed. But as far as the emotional support goes, that wasn't there. As far as her being physically present most of the time, that was hit or miss, mostly not there. And again, this is something that I realized that she only, she did the best that she knew how based on what she had. And when you think about all of those things together, and then you, for example, you go into how you carry those things into your adulthood, you don't even realize you're carrying those things with you, until something serious, or to, for the lack of a better phrase, till the stuff hits the fan. Okay.
Oh yeah, I know.
And you have to get an have to get an understanding, like, where did all this come from? Why is this okay? Why is it okay for me to accept somebody being overbearing? Well, because maybe I was lacking a certain level of emotional support and physical presence, whether that be from my mother or my father. There goes the neglect part, right? You know, dealing with a significant other speaking to you a kind of way. Maybe it's a controlling factor, telling you who you get to talk to, who you don't get to talk to, um, finding reasons to isolate you. Well, why would I find that to be okay? Well, because maybe when I was growing up, I had overly stern rules that I had to follow, which would be the more off. Let me make sure I say this right. Author, authoritarian. I'm not saying that right for some
Yeah,
reason.
don't ask
But
me.
anyway, it's authoritative and an authority. Okay, I'm saying authoritarian and
Okay, okay.
authoritative. Authoritarian parenting style would be more of, expecting your children to follow everything that you say with blind obedience because I said so, right?
Hmm.
Children are not to be, are not to be heard, but be seen, and
Hmm.
that's something that I grew up with. I grew up with the routine of not necessarily having connections with a bunch of other people and it being okay, you know what I'm saying, to build relationships with people, so to speak, in an open way, for the fear that people would see what's going on in the home or inside and then have their 2 cents about it or, impede on the program that's going on there. I thought it was okay because it was normal for me. That was normal practice. So to be isolated from people and to feel like it's, I'm being protected, that's something that people don't even realize that's a form of psychological abuse, and it changes how you move. It changes how you interact with people when you go to work, when you go to school, when you deal with your children's teachers, when you deal with your children, when deal with family members. When you go to the grocery store and you deal with the cashier, it changes. It really does form and shape how you just deal with the world, how you respond to the world.
Hmm.
And it just comes from a place where you don't have exposure to something different. That's the only thing that you have referred to, and you view it as something that's normal practice. You don't know any better until you learn better. And, the biggest hangups, with some of us is that sometimes we're, afraid of the unknown. So we don't make it a point to learn better so that we can do better. Or somewhere along the line, we convince ourselves that this is the only way that things are going to be. So you stay there. You know what I mean? And you believe that you deserve it, or that again, this is normal. This is supposed to happen. This is okay to happen. This is what I grew up with. My mom did this for however many years. My dad did this for however many years, and they turned out okay. You know what I mean? So this is obviously
Hmm.
supposed to happen. So I didn't seek therapy because I thought that it was normal. It was supposed to happen, or that I did something wrong in the little way that I was able to move, that maybe I'm I earned this and I have to endure it because I did something wrong. And so as an adult, once I got more exposure to different relationships that I was able to form and build, I realized that there was a very unsettling and unhealthy way of living that I had adopted. I needed to do something about it. So, I at that point started to seek counsel, but I mean, it took a while.
Okay. You know what? Well, because I've known you, I could picture the home life being strict because I mean there's pros and there's cons, but you could tell how children behave to where you could tell that the house structure is a certain way, right? So it was a few people from back then that I could just look and be like, okay, they have a solid home. It may not be perfect because mine wasn't perfect either, but but you could kind of tell like home is a structure, and there's a balance, even if it's like a chaotic balance. You can kind of tell like there's a balance, um, and
It was certainly a balance. It may not have been healthy, but
yeah. I mean, but see, some of it. I mean, I really can't describe what's healthy. I know sometimes people make things work that probably shouldn't work, and then everything turns out okay. And then some people do things the way that people quote unquote say that you should do it, and then it turns out all wrong. So I mean, each situation is highly different, but just having that balance to where you as a child know that you're growing up, and there's certain lines that you don't cross. That does translate into how you are at school, how you are in life. You get to learn boundaries early. Those boundaries may change when you get older, when you go through life, but you know how to manage boundaries pretty well. Now, as far as, but I could also tell the children whose parents were the shut up, don't talk back to me type, those people that I've known have grown up like that really can't communicate that well, or they're scared to communicate, because like communication kind of starts at home. If you're shutting the kid up all the time, that kid doesn't know how to talk, how to express themselves. And it took me a while to get to that point. um, you know, and my dad, which is, not that many people like him, but he's smart. He just has a drinking problem, but he's really, really smart. And one of the things that he taught me was how to communicate. That came with some other stuff too, but he did teach me how to speak my mind. He came over for Sunday dinner the first time, like 2 or 3 months ago, for the first time in years, and he let my daughter just talk his head off like an hour. He was like, "Nah, they're okay. They could talk," because he was never that type. But my mom was that type. Don't talk back to me, yada 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 yada, and and sometimes I feel like sometimes women can push harder, maybe because they're scared of their children getting out of line. But she most definitely, man, I got beat up. So like, by like both of them, but like she was most definitely the one that was like, don't talk back to me, do what I say, don't question me, type of thing. But because I had that balance from my dad to say what you got to say, I kind of just, okay, I'm gonna get a whooping for this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. So whatever, you know. But so I could tell that you had structure, but now leading into your adulthood, did you see the red flags? Or I mean, I know it's harder for you to see it when you're in it, but sometimes even when you're in it, you'll be like, this isn't right. So before things went all the way left, like, did you ever catch yourself thinking to yourself like, okay, this situation isn't right. Maybe I should find like a way out, type of thing, or like, was it all like normal till it all went crazy?
This is how I will speak to that. I can remember the very first red flag that I received from the time I was pregnant with my first child. Um, Literally, I could, feel it in the pit of my stomach, and I can remember the day like it was yesterday. I think that for me, um, there was a sense of pride and denial to move forward with the situation because of where I was. You know, I was 17 and pregnant. My mother was the type of mother where it was like, don't you get pregnant because you can't stay here. You know, um, when you get 18, you got to go. And sometimes I didn't know if she was playing or if she was serious. And for me, I had started working when I was 13 years old. I had started to become a contributor to the household once I started bringing money in the house. So, what people fail to realize is these kind of things, these kind of decisions and red flags. are noticed, but there are reasons why sometimes they go undetected or ignored. For me, I'll say some of them went undetected and some of them that were blatant were ignored. And they were ignored because at that time I was unable to recognize that I had a better way, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So my options were deal with my mom and continue to go through the emotional abuse I might have to go through and being talked down to, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
maybe belittled in a way that's supposed to be motivational but it really ain't. um, or try to claim my independence with my new baby daddy who I'm going to ignore, who could possibly not be so good for me.
Now,
you know um, yeah,
now,
it just becomes one of those things where you just decide that oh well, he's mad, I'm going to ignore that. He said that out of anger, but then it becomes a pattern. And then
okay.
that's where the problem really starts to present itself, is when it becomes a pattern.
Now, now, did he come from a two-parent household?
No.
Okay. The way that I'm raising my children now, and the things that I'm talking to my oldest son now is don't like if, and this is gonna sound messed up, but I'm a type of person. I read into things. I study people. I I I people watch all the time. And people that don't grow up in a two parent household, it really is it's a deeper growing process than the people that don't most of the time. Like even if you're a good person, the balance of you being in a relationship is going to be off for a while, and you may have many failed relationships uh, until you get it right. Um, Especially starting off young and having a kid on the way. I mean, listen, I've been married once, and I've been in many relationships before my second marriage, uh, which I'm currently married now. But and it's like the person that I am now, as far as a leader and being able to navigate through tough situations and things that come and go, is like it's way different. Um, I felt that I managed it well then, but I could look back and be like, yeah, I was kind of on track then, but well, I wasn't supposed to be in that situation. Um, because when you're young, trying to be grown too fast or grown up too fast and take on the world, it's like things can get stressful, and then things happen, and then it's like, how do we get here? And would you look up and it's like 5 6 years, it's like, how did you get here? you know so I could totally understand. Now, so from the verbal, uh, from mom, in the verbal, in the physical, from the boyfriend, like how did that affect the children, as far as because I know that you talked about when they went to school, you found yourself not like doing much with the time, which I mean that could just, you just needed to rest while they were at school. And but was it was it more of you like feeling sorry for yourself when they were gone and just trying to get your everything back, or like were you like blowing up at them whenever they would do, because like little small things that don't matter, and you be like, oh my god, like why did you do that? Like was it like those type of things, like to where you could see like, okay, now I'm not really being the best mom that I could be.
It was all of the above. Where I really started to look at it was I had a colleague of mine come home with me. At the time I was going to Columbus State, and she said to me, "Why are you so critical? They're babies." Now, I'm one of those people who I'll take, depending on the source, what somebody says to me about what I'm doing to heart. And I will self reflect on why that was said to me. Initially, most of our responses when you hear something like that from somebody is to get defensive. Me, I like to reflect. Why was that said? What did I do for you to say that?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my willingness to over reflect came from the feeling of not, being enough. So, in a way that it helped me, and in a way, sometimes it caused me to want to change myself so much that I became a people pleaser. What do I need to do right? What do I need to change? When it came to my kids, though, I was doing what I knew. I was doing what I was shown. I was doing what I grew up with. And, it took for outside input and continuous, outside input and observations for me to say, you know what? And then from there, it was education, educating myself. I can honestly say going to nursing school and then diving into psychology really helped me out, and then again, just continuing educating myself from there. And then also putting myself in situations where I had to deal with other people's kids. And also, I think going into the area of special needs, that also helped me out.
Okay.
But initially, it was somebody telling me straight up, like I was being too critical. And I didn't understand what you meant. Like, I grew up with criticism all around me. That's normal life. What do you mean critical? What is critical? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That was me being normal, People found it hard to believe that I had 3 kids. And, my house a lot of times looked like nobody lived there because of how clean it was. And they would tell me, like, that's not normal.
Oh.
And to me, it was normal. Me, it was normal. But you know what I mean? It was normal, but I had come to realize that I was overly critical. And because I think that I was growing up in a lifestyle where things seem chaotic and sometimes it just seems like we're out of control, I took on the feeling of feeling like I had to have control over every little thing. Every little itty bitty thing had to be a certain specific way, and I had to have my hand in it and my control in it, and it had to be the way that I wanted it to be, the way I said it to be, because that's how I want it, and that's a trauma response.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you redo your furniture in your house a lot?
I used to. I don't anymore. But one of my daughters does that in her room actually currently.
Yeah.
She changes it all the time. So I'm actually one of those people where, like my sister would tell you, she lived with me about 11 or 12 years ago. And there's a specific way that I had my chase sitting in my living room. And the reason why I had it sitting that way was because my living room was small, but my furniture was big. And if it was a hair a different direction, when I walked past it, then my knee or my leg would either hit my coffee table or the chase. So I had it sit in a particular angle so that when I would walk through and walk around, it was real smooth, and I had to worry about bumping into nothing. And I came home one day and my chase was moved and I had completely lost my mind. And she's like, "You're crazy. Something's wrong with you. It's just a chase. I just moved it just a little bit. It's not that serious." And for me, it was that serious. For me, it was a matter of security. I knew how things were. This is how I put it. This is how I said it. This is my, property. This is my place. I pay bills here. This is how I grew up. I grew up with, understanding that there was a certain level of control that my mother had to have, with us and with everything in the house and with the way things were. And so I had adopted that, and sometimes when things were a little bit crazy, I found comfort in my own little space and making sure it was perfect. Everything had to be perfect. And that way I felt in control. And so that was that was something that I projected. I projected that onto my kids. I put that on them, and it wasn't fair to them to be 2, 3, and 4 years old, have expected to be perfect.
Now,
you know.
Now
So,
the reason why I asked you that is because I read a book. Uh, it's by Suzanne Vinker. It's it's the guide to being married to an alpha woman or something like that. Um, and she was basically talking about how her mom was and the things that happened that transferred from her to her mom. And one of the things that she said it was because she grew up in a kind of hectic household. She would rearrange her room all the time because in that chaos, her room was the only thing that she could control. So every
yep,
so often, she would switch her furniture around and she would do this and she would do that. Um, and that's why I asked that question because the more that you talk, the more I start thinking about those chapters that I read, and it was like this sounds exactly kind of like the book that I read.
I used to.
So
I used to. I used to. And my daughter, one of my daughters, she does that. She reminds me of myself. And I just think to myself, like, you know, I'm gonna I'm gonna help her heal because I'm responsible for, the reason why she's like that. And that resonates with me. I didn't even mention my grandmother also was this way. I used to spend summers at my grandmother's house doing nothing but listening to her talk crazy to me and making me organize everything. So, that also added to my madness.
mhm.
Yeah, while everybody else was outside playing around and enjoying the summertime, I'm in the house with my grandmother organizing and listening to her be my grandmother.
Hey, but those are good times though. I mean, I can't say that, but but those could be good times. Um, now now with your company, what type of curriculum do you have like kind of in place to help women that are seeking help?
For my curriculum, what I'm setting in place now is more of a framework that follows the nursing method, um, which is assessment, diagnosis, or for a better term to use, identification of the problem,
Hmm.
identifying outcome, planning,
Hmm.
implementation, and then evaluation. And it would be a repeat of the process depending on, where we find my client is in the evaluation process. My initial uh, introductory piece would be to do teaching of awareness, to, make sure that I can help my client understand how to be self aware. And that's number one. I think that you can't really get to the root of any issue if you aren't even aware of it first.
Hmm.
Um, then, once becoming aware of that issue, and you see it, it's present, you feel it, you recognize it, unpack it. Now we unpack it, right?
Hmm.
We unpack it, and then now we need to take, and we need, after unpacking these things, we need to figure out, you know, um, where are these things going? You know, how are we going to distribute these things that we've unpacked and that we now understand and are aware of about ourselves? And how are we going to use that to move forward? You know, and so all of that will be broken down um, pretty much in a manner in which someone would go to uh, maybe the hospital and be treated, but the way that I'm going to implement the process is going to be very different. As a means, as you're learning, but you're learning about yourself. And so it's going to be more of a processing time.
Hmm.
Um, Learning coping skills, learning, you know, proactive ways to avoid conflict, understand, why you may react or respond to certain stressors and certain situations in a manner that you maybe didn't understand before, but I'm going to help you understand that now and help you navigate that better so that when it's presented to you and you face it, you don't have the same result that you were having before. You have, a different experience that helps you feel more liberated, that helps you feel more free, that helps you feel more at peace. When you face something that was difficult to face before, but now after having gone through my program, you understand, you're aware of why, you reacted to, a stressor a certain kind of way, and how it led to you to spiral, down a path that wasn't pleasant, down a path that, maybe blocked you from, doing things to your best possible potential. So now what we'll do is we'll take that block away, and now that you don't have that blockage, you can navigate life in a way that, you can excel, you can go to the next step. I think that the biggest thing that I really would like to do is be able to help people take those mental blocks away. I don't think that there's enough awareness. So right now, awareness is like my biggest focus. And then it's every individual person is in a different place. Based on every individual person, I'll once doing an assessment, I'll be able to say, okay, this is what I see, and this is how I think I'll be able to help you based on a situation. Yeah.
Now,
does that answer your question?
yes. Now, when it pertains to the children, right? Because children are so impressionable, and I've worked with kids. I've worked with special needs. I've helped coach football teams, and one of the biggest things that I see is that once a child's confidence is kind of broken, it does a lot of damage in different ways. So when it pertains to the children, so let's say that you have women that's in your program and they have children and they've been in a messed up state mentally, and that's trickled down to their children. Do you have something in that program that would start helping them rebuild the bridge to their children and building their children's confidence back up? So that way, when that child gets grown, they don't repeat the process. Because sometimes people think, well, children are resilient, they'll be okay. Well, some kids, but more times than not, you can see that our parents pass us down things, we pass down to our children, and until something makes us think like, yo, this isn't right, you think it's normal, till something like clearly, it's like, yo, what are you doing? Like, this is not right. But maybe by that time that you come to that, or that they come to that, it may be too late for the child if something else isn't put in place to start building that child back up.
That is a very tender subject, and I totally understand where you're coming from. I've worked with children too, at-risk youth, and I've even been in a situation where my child became that at-risk youth, and I had to put her in someone else's hands because I had to recognize where, there were areas where I could really reach my child, and there are other areas where she didn't want me to reach her, and I had to accept that. What I can say is that what I have set up for my program is the implementation of teaching relationship building techniques, conflict de-escalation, deep listening, understanding what it means to really deeply listen and be present in your listening, and when I believe personally that when you work on the communication piece, everything else pretty much falls in line. And once you get someone to understand who maybe has been ineffectively communicating, and this is based on the kind of, the word choices that they use, body language that they use, coupled with the words that they use, the tone, the quality of their voice, the presentation of their whole entire demeanor, I think that once you make someone aware of how it affects that child emotionally, and then they are in the mindset that they want to change it, then you can say, okay, this is how we can go about this. These are the techniques I can show you with how to better communicate these kinds of emotions or these kind of feelings. A lot of times, children will act out what they're feeling because they don't know how to verbalize it. So that's something that I would do is, not only teach the mother, but also encourage the mother on how to help her child, verbalize those feelings and emotions by teaching her to do it for herself, but also helping her to recognize the emotions. And in the scenario where a child might be reluctant to share how they're feeling emotionally because they might not be able to pinpoint it, help the mother and say, hey, this is where you can say, hey, I felt like this before. This is what I felt in that moment. And then maybe they'll open up to you because they feel relatable to you, and that's the one way you can build a rapport with your own child and get them to open up to you, and then be able to implement what you've learned to them, because ultimately, you are your children's first teachers. And so if I can teach the mother, which is why the mother is my focus, if I can teach the mother and if I can help the mother rebuild her mindset, and I can help the mother, understand areas that, she may be affecting her children and what the kind of effect that's going to have on them leaving the household and going out into the world, then, mom can say, let me take a few steps back and let me approach this differently. Let me implement, better ways of communication. Let me implement words of affirmation. Let me implement, ways to be present, actually engaging, with your child. Let me implement ways to be supportive, and actually making sure that my child knows that, I mean to be supportive. And there are several different ways to do it, and I think that it's just, again, it's a matter of awareness. So that's the biggest thing, is that, some people can make better decisions when they're informed. And I am here to inform the uninformed.
Okay. Okay. I like those answers. Um, now, um, would you, in the future, because first you have to get your program up and running. Now, in the future, would you partner with like somebody else to do the same thing for men as you're doing for women, and maybe it could be some kind of partnership program that both of the people go through at the same time, because men do it too. It just manifests a little bit differently. Um, because there was a football coach actually that actually told me that I was being too hard on my son, and I'm like, what? Like, this is football, like, But he was like, listen, he's like, I know that you're a good dad and whatnot, but you're being a little bit too hard on him. So and that right there made me think, because first of all, I didn't know that particular coach, um, and I was like, I'm like kind of like you, but like kind of like, yo, who are you to to tell me
You have
exact?
to consider the source.
Yeah, you know what I'm
You have
saying.
to.
So, but coaches are volunteers, and me working at daycares and also helping coach, I know that when you are working closely with kids and you see certain things, so even though I felt defensive for like 2 or 3 seconds, like like I kind of gave him like a little look, like you know what I'm saying, but I was like, he is a coach, he's volunteering his time to work with all these kids, and that actually made me take a step back, and then I started realizing um, that I was, because my oldest son, when he became frustrated, he would shut down and he would start crying, and he wouldn't say nothing, and he'd just shut down and he'd just start crying. He wouldn't move, he wouldn't do nothing, and then that's when I really dove into reading psychology books and just reading things about human behavior, and just diving in. Like I read so many books, because from that moment on, um, I wanted to be intentional about what I did with my kids. So if you have a woman that's in a situation and the man that's in the same situation, maybe in the future have them both of them go through the program at the same time. So that way, even if it's nothing wrong with him, yeah, teach him to be a better support for her and a better support for the kids when the parents get all this stuff together, and then the kids will be, you know, like better off.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm definitely prepared to, collaborate, form partnerships as I see fit and as I see necessary. The way that I look at this is I'm serving a community of people. I believe that this is my God given purpose. So, you know, if I believe it's going to serve the purpose that I'm out to serve myself, absolutely. I'm going to make the recommendations that need made. I'm gonna make the collaborations that need made, make the partnerships that need made. Yeah, absolutely,
Man,
absolutely.
I can't wait to see this 5 years from now. Um, because I mean, the more I read and the more I pay attention to the world, I see how like it's really messed up. Like there's a lot of messed up everything. It never surprises me. Um, but and I'm gonna see if YouTube will let me sponsor this stream, just to put it in different places, because this is not a big channel yet. But I do want people to have more conversations, because like right now the whole big thing is the women are wrong, the men are wrong, and all this and all that. But what's getting left out, I mean, for the most part, I mean, people talk about it is how to help people that would translate into helping the children right now. Because
Right.
while everybody's bickering about whatever they're bickering about, you have the children that's growing up in the chaos that we all created. So it's kind
Hmm.
of like I don't work closely with children anymore because I have four of them. Um, but um, but I do see things that I don't like. I don't know how to approach it because usually it's with like total strangers. Um, I see somebody like cussing out their 2-year-old son or something like that. Like, I'm like, why would you do that? But um, I can't wait to see this years from now. And if I could be of any help, I really don't know how I would be of any help, but except for to spread the word or like whatever. Um, then I would be more than glad to pass out flyers, you know, market on the internet, because people are hurt. Um, and I see that a lot. People are hurt, and then people create their normal, and they don't realize that their normal is from a hurt place. So it's like you're hurt, but you normalize it. Then you hurt the children. Eventually, they'll normalize it, and then it just keeps going down, and it doesn't help anybody. So,
Constant cycle of hurting people, and hurting people,
oh yeah,
hurt people. It just keeps going.
oh yeah, oh
Just
yeah,
keeps going. Just keeps going. It just takes for someone to say, "I'm going. This is a cycle. This is a cycle. I want to break the cycle." And it has to start somewhere. And as long as we stay, fervent and consistent, intentional, disciplined, persistent in the end goal, and just understanding that we're working to break a cycle, I believe that we'll make a difference. So I thank you for having me, and I thank you for your support. I too can't wait to see this in years to come, because I know that, first of all, this is much bigger than me. But I see myself as a vessel, and this has been on my heart for quite some time. I know that it takes someone who fully understands, what it means to step out on faith and to say, I'm going to be bold and I'm going to use myself, you know, because ultimately when it comes to me, and I'm a believer, and that's what the Bible says. God wants to use you and your mess to help free other people. So I'm willing to say, hey, let me tell you about my mess, because I know there are people that can relate. And let me tell you how I got out of my mess. Let me tell you how I'm continuing to get out of my mess. You can't always find that kind of stuff in a book. I mean, you might be able to, but you know, raw details and raw experiences and tangible and realistic, methods of how to handle things that are, super relatable to today's time. I think that is very valuable, and it's something that is a scarcity right now, and especially with relation to conversations people don't want to have, which is abuse in all its forms. It's not a conversation that people are going to have about themselves. People, you get people who talk about, some of the physical abuse situations that they've been through, but some people aren't willing to say, hey, emotional abuse caused me to be, somebody I didn't like. I didn't like myself. I didn't like looking at myself in the mirror. And a lot of people are not going to say that. They're not going to say how I got through that. A lot of people aren't going to say, sometimes I saw my child and I saw myself. Sometimes I tried to beat me out of my child. People aren't going to say, they're not willing to talk about that. But you best believe that that kind of thing is happening. And it takes for somebody
Oh
to
yeah.
say, I'm willing to talk about how I freed myself from that. Let me help you be freed from that so that your child can be free. So yeah,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
mission.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that's needed, um, because the way I feel is like everybody's trying to be perfect, and they will share the information and help as long as it puts them
Looks good.
in, yeah,
It's pretty.
it puts them in this perfect light to where it's like but sometimes, you know and I know that it's like a risky thing. I think it's becoming less risky now. Sometimes to really help people, like, you really have to share with them how dark things really got, because we're all people. There's nothing really new. I don't know how long this world's been this world, but there's nothing really new. So it's like, if you're trying to help people, you know, and you're trying to help somebody out of a dark place, then you can't help them with some of the books that come out and they kind of glaze over, because one time I did try therapy. Um, I went to therapy twice, and I left the first therapist because I really felt like that person wasn't helping. I was like, this is not helping me. I was like, if anything, it's making me more frustrated, because it's like they were coming from a method of, oh, everything's brand new, just forget about the past and all this and all that. Like, I can't forget about the past because it's not the past just yet. Like, I'm going through it right now, and you're trying to tell me, oh, it'll be okay. Like, no, I got some stuff that I'm trying to work through. Like, and you're not helping, so I need to find somebody else. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry you experienced that. I think what people, again, it's so interesting to hear that particular testimony because, anybody who understands behavior and how people move, you have to understand that people don't ever forget how a situation or somebody or an experience made them feel. You don't ever forget that. What you do is you figure out how to exist now being that person with that experience. Okay, so I have this with me. This is a part of who I am. How do I continue to be who I am and who I want to be with this with me? Because this is heavy. Because now, because I've experienced this, now I don't look at people the same. I don't even look at myself the same. I can't even mentally talk to myself the same. How do I exist in this world where now I have this experience that is with me? You're supposed to help people in it from a therapy standpoint process that out, because ultimately when you help people process that out, they tend to find that they have their own answers, but sometimes they need provocation. They need prompted. Sometimes they need the words, the phrases, the tasks. They need to figure out what the path is to doing that self work, to figure out that they have the answers. And it's a strategic way that you do that, when those processes. And some people just don't have the mind space for that. So you have to help them get the mind space to do that. And trying to tell somebody to forget it, that certainly does not help.
no, yeah, I mean,
Definitely.
it didn't help me at all. But but now, you know, and I was young during the time too. I may have been 23 or 24 when I went, and it was like somebody else to talk to, that didn't really know me that would give me like just unbiased, you know, counsel. Um, I didn't want to talk to nobody at church. I didn't want to talk to none of the homies, you know, because, you know, therapy, especially then, it was a stigma thing, you know, whatever. And people really didn't talk
Mhm.
about it then. So,
Yeah.
when they were all hanging out, I was probably at a counseling session somewhere, you know. And just to seek for that outside counsel, like, no, I don't want to talk about Jesus right now. I don't want to talk to the homies right now. I need somebody, that's trained in something just to help me through this period of life. So, I mean, I can already tell that your heart is in the right place. And like I've told you before, you've always been one of those people that was high on character. So I believe that this will go great. I can't wait to start seeing the results from it. Just because I think that this is awesome. These conversations are needed. Um, you know, it, I know. Well, to me, I don't see black and white. I see culture. Because as many black families that I know need help, I know a lot of white families that need help. In where we grew up at, it was kind of all mixed in anyway. Kind of sort of was like all mixed in, and I see it across the board. Um, so it's like I think this would be great. I can't really wait for just to see the results and to see the testimonials come out and 5 or 6 years down the line and be like, you know what, she said she was gonna do it. So like I mean, things like this make me happy because man, you've seen some stuff, I've seen some stuff, and when you see from where you were and the things that you've been through, I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's like we walk to the corner store all the time. I don't let my kids walk to the corner store because I didn't know during the time what was going on at the corner store. I didn't know how much danger I was in going to the corner store after I grew up. It's like, yo, we were really walking through some stuff, like a lot of stuff, So so things like this make me happy because it's like, just to bring it full circle, it's like you see where you were, you are where you are, and if you can find the capacity to help others, with what you're trained in. I mean, things like this make me happy. So you were there, now you're here, and I can't see. I can't wait to see where you are in the future because and just seeing people help people, especially people that I know, like I think it's awesome. So
I appreciate it. I
no,
really do. I appreciate, you speaking, overly positively about, the foresight of where my program has the potential to go. And, I'm excited to just continue to get the word out there that, my program exists and what its purpose is. And I'm looking to serve, as many people that I have the capacity to serve. And then maybe, from a year or 2 or 3 now, I can grow it into something that's happening, not just with me, but with other people looking to serve in the same way and in the same capacity. I'm looking, I
hey,
want to see people healed. So yeah,
uh, and
healing is
and hey,
necessary.
hop on hop on YouTube, start your own platform, because
Yes,
yeah,
yes, I
because
agree.
because I like talking to people, I like learning from people, um, and I come across a lot of people every day. Now I don't know if my channel can really source all the conversation that I have, but that's part of the reason why I named it what I named it is because I want to have these public conversations, no matter what it is. 'Cause I run across a different array of people, but when you're online and you're connected to everybody, and I follow like doctors and psychiatrists and lawyers on Facebook, and it's a lot of people that are seeking help. and you may be able to find that you can, you could be personable with the people that's in person, but then you can also help people that are miles and miles away too. So
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely. I actually spent a very intense past almost 28 days in a business boot camp that has definitely pushed visibility. So visibility is something I'm definitely working on. So I am looking to get myself connected and established more digitally. Doing blogs, doing YouTube video vlogs, and showing up as much as possible so that I can create access that's in person as well as digital or virtual. Absolutely.
man, I can't wait, man. I can't wait. But let me see. I don't even know how many. What's the time at? I can't see. Um, well, listen. Thank you for
We are at 10:38.
10:38. Okay, okay. Um, well, listen, man. Thank you for coming up. Um, and then maybe we could do this, down the line. Have people hop on, because I would love to just see you have conversations with people just about different things, because like as you do what you do, people are going to follow. I can see that happening now, and then you're going to have people, you know, starting to reach out and things like that, and I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to hopefully be a part of it in some way. But yeah, like thank you for coming up. You can always.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, hey, listen. Because first we were gonna talk just about parenting, but then I did see one of the posts on Facebook, and then I was gonna ask you about talking about this topic, but I was like, nah, that may be too personal. So I didn't want to pry in. But then when you messaged me about talking about this topic, I was like, cool, because I kind of wanted to talk about it anyway, but I wasn't gonna bring it up because I was like, that's a different avenue than what we had first talked about. So, I was like, but then you brought it to me, so I was like, okay, yeah, we could talk.